This was the moment when a quiet shopping afternoon at a California mall erupted into chaos, as roughly 25 masked intruders stormed a jewelry store in San Ramon in September of 2025. Surveillance footage shows the group rushing in almost simultaneously, smashing glass display cases with crowbars as customers and employees scrambled for safety. The entire robbery unfolded in less than 2 minutes, with suspects scooping up over $1 million in jewelry. When security doors partially locked, trapping some of them inside, at least one suspect fired a gun at the door to force an escape. The group then scattered into multiple waiting vehicles, several later confirmed stolen, triggering a nationwide police response and pursuit. Investigators described the robbery as highly coordinated and pre-planned, with roles assigned and several lookouts positioned outside, and said it mirrored a growing wave of increasingly aggressive mob-style jewelry heists in the area. Several suspects were arrested in the days that followed, facing robbery, conspiracy, and weapons charges, but authorities say most of the suspects involved in the coordinated heist remain at large. In 1957, two young sisters in England, Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock, were killed instantly when a speeding car suddenly struck them during their walk to church. Their parents were shattered by the loss, but a year later they had twin daughters, Jillian and Jennifer, who as they grew began showing strange overlaps with the former girls' lives, recognizing toys they'd never seen, describing places they'd never visited, and developing an intense fear of cars. Jennifer was reportedly even born with birthmarks in the same locations as Jacqueline's. The memories eventually faded, but the Pollock twins became one of the most cited cases in discussions of childhood reincarnation, with some people believing it was true reincarnation and others arguing it was grief, suggestion, or outright coincidence. A 6-year-old boy from Missouri was subjected to a staged kidnapping orchestrated by his own family to teach him a lesson about stranger danger. Police say an aunt's coworker lured him into a truck, told him he'd never see his mother again, and threatened to nail him to the wall of a shed. When he started sobbing, the man showed him a handgun and ordered him to stop crying. Investigators say he tied the boy's hands and feet, covered his face, and drove him around for hours while the child begged to go home. Once back at the house, relatives brought him into the basement and kept the act going, lecturing him about strangers while he was still terrified and restrained. Multiple adults were later charged after authorities said the ordeal caused genuine trauma, inflicted by the very people meant to protect him. This was the moment when a DoorDash delivery driver was caught on camera spraying something into a family's Arby's order, seconds after dropping it off and taking a picture before casually walking away. Indiana man Mark Cardin said when his wife began eating, she immediately started choking, gasping, and vomiting, and her husband noticed a strange residue coating the inside of the bag. After reviewing the footage, he realized the driver had allegedly pepper sprayed the food on purpose for reasons no one can explain. The sheriff's office is now investigating, and the case could lead to a felony consumer product tampering charge, the kind filed when a regular delivery turns into a potentially life-threatening attack. A 10-pound mini dachshund named Valerie vanished during a camping trip on Kangaroo Island, then somehow survived 529 days alone in the Australian bush. Rescuers spent months trying to trap her, stunned that such a tiny house dog had endured snakes, heat, and feral predators long enough to actually gain weight. Some think she lived off roadkill, while others believe someone was feeding her, since no one can explain how she lasted nearly a year and a half in one of the harshest landscapes in the world. When she was finally caught using a trap baited with her favorite toys and her owner's clothes, vets found her fit and well, closing one of the most improbable pet survival stories ever documented. Susan King spent 6.5 years in prison for a murder she couldn't possibly have committed. She had one leg, weighed under 100 pounds, and didn't even own a car. Yet police claimed she beat, shot, and dragged a man before tossing his body off a bridge 40 miles away. The lead detective built the entire case on lies, fake ballistics, drag marks that were actually water damage, and blood evidence that never matched the victim. And investigators later admitted they had doubts about her guilt before it even went to trial. But terrified of facing life in prison or the death penalty, Susan took a plea deal and went to prison for murdering a man she never even laid her hands on. Years later, a different man confessed in detail to the murder, even describing facts never released to the public, and even claimed the same detective threatened him to stay quiet. Only then was Susan exonerated, and the state eventually paid her $750,000. The detective who framed her never faced charges. He simply retired while under investigation for unrelated sexual misconduct. This was the moment when a pool cleaner spotted everyone's worst nightmare at the bottom of a backyard pool, the family dog completely motionless. The dog likely snuck into the pool area when the man opened the gate and fell in without anyone noticing. Luckily, the cleaner didn't hesitate, jumping straight into the water and dragging the lifeless dog to the surface before immediately starting chest compressions on the patio. After nearly a minute of desperate attempts to revive the dog, he suddenly gasped, coughed up water, and came back to life. A clutch rescue that hopefully earned the pool cleaner a decent tip. This woman is lucky to be alive after a cassowary casually walked up to her on a quiet beach, a bird often called the world's most dangerous for a reason. Native to parts of Oceania, cassowaries have dagger-like claws that can easily disembowel you with a single kick, and they've been responsible for multiple serious injuries and even fatal attacks when people panic or get too close. But this woman did the right thing by staying calm, since cassowaries are most aggressive when they feel threatened or startled. By remaining still and non-threatening, she kept the encounter from escalating into the type of attack the species is infamous for. Mary Kay Letourneau became one of the most notorious teachers in American history after authorities discovered she'd formed an illegal relationship with a 12-year-old student in her class, a crime that shocked the country and completely destroyed her family. She was arrested in 1997 and sent to prison, where she gave birth to his child while still serving time. When she got out on parole, a judge ordered her to stay away from the boy entirely, but she was caught violating that order and was sent back to prison to finish a full 7-year sentence, a move prosecutors said showed how disturbingly deep her attraction to him ran. When she was finally released, the story took an even darker turn. The former student, now an adult, chose to reunite with her, and the pair eventually married in 2005 despite their relationship beginning as a felony case, described by experts as a profound abuse of power. They stayed together for over a decade before finally separating, leaving behind one of the most unsettling and controversial teacher-student scandals in recorded history. In 2020, Canadian actor Ryan Grantham, known for his roles in Riverdale and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, shot and killed his 64-year-old mother while she was playing piano in their home, then filmed the aftermath on a GoPro. Grantham then packed his car with guns, ammunition, Molotov cocktails, and a map to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's residence, allegedly planning to assassinate him. But instead, he drove to a police station and turned himself in. During the trial, it was revealed that Grantham was suffering from severe depression and suicidal thoughts. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole in 14 years. In 1988, expert skydiver Ivan McGuire boarded a plane in North Carolina to film a routine jump from 10,000 feet. With over 800 jumps under his belt, he was calm, confident, and fully focused on capturing the perfect footage. His helmet camera recorded everything: his smooth exit from the plane, the free fall, and the other jumpers floating below. But partway through the descent, McGuire began frantically patting his back, expressing confusion that quickly turned to panic. Just seconds before impact, his voice can be heard yelling, "Oh my God, no!" He was apparently so focused on filming that he had jumped without a parachute. In 2019, Daniela Lace left a Marilyn Manson concert in Ontario while heavily intoxicated and drove the wrong way down a residential street, crashing into a home and rupturing a gas line. 15 minutes later, the house exploded, destroying 4 homes, injuring 7 people including first responders, and causing an estimated $10 to $15 million in damage. Lace was sentenced to 3 years in prison after pleading guilty to impaired driving causing bodily harm. In a bizarre twist, she and her father later sued the concert venue's alcohol vendor, claiming they were responsible for overseeing her and allowing her to drive drunk. The Bodies exhibit, which displays real human cadavers preserved through plastination, has long been shrouded in controversy due to allegations that many of the bodies were sourced from Chinese prisons without consent. Human rights groups believe that some of the corpses may belong to executed prisoners or political dissidents, including members of persecuted groups like Falun Gong. In 2008, the exhibit's parent company was forced to admit that it couldn't verify the origins of the bodies, posting a disclaimer that some remains may have come from Chinese prisoners. Visitors may unknowingly be viewing the dissected bodies of people who died under horrific conditions. In 2006, Abraham Shakespeare won $30 million in the Florida lottery and tried to use it to help others, giving away large sums to friends, family, and even strangers. But sadly, his generosity made him a target. A woman named Doris Dee Moore pretended to help manage his finances, slowly taking control of his assets while isolating him from loved ones. In 2009, Abraham suddenly vanished without a trace. Months later, his body was found buried beneath a concrete slab behind Dee Dee's property, shot twice in the chest and covered with lime. In 2012, Moore was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Florence Lawrence, often called the first movie star, rose to fame in the early 1900s and became one of the first film actors to be publicly credited by name. At the height of her career, she suffered a devastating injury in 1915 when a staged fire spiraled out of control, leaving her with severe burns and a fractured spine. Universal Studios refused to pay her medical bills, and her career never recovered. Over the years, she faded into obscurity, taking uncredited roles and struggling with chronic pain and depression. When she died in 1938, she was buried in an unmarked grave, as Hollywood had all but forgotten the woman who helped define it.